Okay, thank you.
Okay, what else do I have here? Here he is.
Good evening. Welcome to the City of Hayden, Idaho Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Today is Monday, August 15th, 2022. May we have a call to order, please? I'm sorry, roll call, commission members, sorry.
Commissioner Bemis?
Here.
Commissioner Gibson?
Here.
Commissioner Howard?
Here.
Commissioner Prickett?
Here.
Vice Chair Taylor?
Here.
Chair Davis?
I'm present. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we go any farther, could I see Lamont Owens for just a quick sec, please? Hi. Could you do me a favor? Let me know if you're neutral for or against. If you don't know, we can just mark neutral. Against? All right, thank you, sir. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? May the record reflect there are none. For the commissioners, are there any conflicts of interest with any agenda item tonight? No. No. I'm hearing no. So the first item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which consists of approval of minutes from July 28th, 2022, approval of minutes from August 1st, 2022, the approval of written decision for PZE-22-0068, also known as Northwest Solutions Conditional Use Permit, and approval of written decision for PZE-22-0079, also known as the Gleason's Conditional Use Permit. Is there any need for discussion, or is there a motion to be made?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent calendar as presented.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. All those in favor indicate so. Aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'm hearing none. Now we will move on to the public hearing tonight. There's verbiage in here for this thing. There we go. For those in the audience, would you please silence your cell phones if you haven't already?
This is a draft.
So before I start, how many people in the audience picked up this on their way in the door? Because if you don't have this, you're going to want this. So raise your hand if you don't have a copy. And grab one and pass it on to your row if you're in the. Oh, one more. Sorry.
For those that just came in, if you could sign in, please. Thank you.
Start this kind of over here, you pass around the rest. I appreciate that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so tonight we're here to have a public hearing on the citywide residential multifamily zone is expiring the end of September, and this is the first of 2 public hearings about this topic. So just as a bit of background, in November of 2020, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan was approved by the City Council. The Imagine Hayden Long Range Plans were approved in December of 2020 and January and February of 2021. Title 11 update happened in April of 2021. And in that Title 11 update, we removed the design standards for the residential multifamily zone. We added new designations of mixed residential and mixed use. We removed redundancy and conflicts in the title, and we went from 22 chapters to 8. We kind of tried to do a citywide zone map amendment nearly a year ago. We noticed property owners in the spring and summer of 2021. We kind of took off a bite that was too big. We hit like 1,700 property owners had properties that were different between the existing zone map and the future land use map. And the council heard loud and clear that that was not a direction that the citizens wanted to go. So they kind of went backwards and said, okay, wait a minute. And they put into place a residential multifamily code was added back in as an interim ordinance, which is allowed by Idaho State Code. But interim ordinances have sunset dates, and when the date hits, you either have to figure out what you're doing. It really only gives you a pause button, not a solution button. So that solution button, pause, ends the end of September. So what does that mean for residential multifamily property owners? It means that in September, the design standards which allow you to do whatever it is you're going to do with your property cease to exist. So you can't do anything with your property, nothing, zero, zilch. If it has anything to do with a building permit or land use, you're just stuck. So we're working really hard on not allowing you guys to get stuck. So City Council, Planning and Zoning had workshops, City Council had workshops, they had a joint workshop, and they directed staff to migrate the lots that are in the residential multifamily zones designations to zones that most closely reflect or address the existing conditions on the site. They directed us to try to not have spot zones where that wasn't, where, you know, we didn't want to have spot zones. And so it's an example of a spot zone, and I know Cameron's going to get mad at me, but this big red spot in the middle of a sea of residential, where commercial is in a sea of residential, that's a spot zone. You really don't want to do that. So we worked really hard on not doing that for the properties that are in the residential multifamily zone today. In July, we noticed every single property owner that had residential multifamily property and said, come to City Hall and meet with us. Call us on the phone, come in to meet with us in person. It's relatively well received, and we've talked to a lot of folks. And we held that town hall to communicate to property owners. If I was a property owner, I'd want to know what my options were. So we tried to have that. So that led us to this. This is a map of the properties that are today zoned residential multifamily. So why I gave you that is because that is the process of a zone map amendment. Zone map amendments have redevelopment meetings, work through a staff analysis. The staff analysis for this citywide zone map amendment has been on the city's website for nearly 2 weeks. Then it goes through a noticing process. This has had a hefty noticing process. By Idaho State Code statutes, you're only required when you notice for over 200 properties to do a public notice in the newspaper. We sent out notices to every single property owner, not once for the town hall, twice for this public hearing. Will be sent out again for the public hearing with City Council. And we also posted all of the entrances to all of the subdivisions and all of the individual property locations. If there were a series of you together, we tried to do that. And as they have disappeared over the past 3 weeks, every 3 days, our building department has gone back out and replaced them. So we've done our exceedingly due diligence to try to ensure that everybody anywhere would have known about this. Because we want your comments. We don't want you to feel like this is happening in a, closed closet, but we want you to participate. So turn over your paper from your flow chart. And on the back of the paper, it lists the standards of approval that people hear about all the time. There are 4 standards of approval for zone map amendments. There are 4 standards of approval that are required of all zone map amendments, whether they're city-initiated zone map amendments or they're property owners' request for a zone map amendment, or they're a future property owner looking to see if he can develop it the way he wants to develop it. All those 4 standards of approval have to be met. So when you're providing public testimony, which I'm sure part of you will be doing tonight, we really want you to provide your public testimony based on those 4 standards of approval, because that's what the commissioners and city council at the next public hearing on September 13th, which I'm sure you'll come back to, that's what they're going to be looking at for their approvals. So I want your comments to be heard. But they can't be heard if it's just saying, I don't like it. That doesn't answer this situation. So when you're phrasing your public comments, you need to gear them toward these standards. All right. So the 4 standards of approval that are listed on your information are up here as well. And during public comments, we're not going to leave the 4 standards of approval up, because each one of you should have had them because we just passed them out. We'll have a map up, which is the same map that was on the city's website, so that you can direct the mouse to wherever you're talking about. And so that our person that's videotaping, as we're on air, YouTube is a great thing, they'll be able to see the map as well and see where you're talking to, okay? Just some directions, because as we work through the staff review, I'm sure you're going to think about things that you want to say during your 5 minutes of testimony. Okay. Good. All right, so the staff review was quite lengthy, and we're going to break it up similar to what we did in the staff review. And you will see me reference the staff review throughout this presentation as kind of because I didn't want to write all those things in there, and you've already read them once. So the first standard that's required to be met of a zone map amendment is that you need to look to see whether or not you need to have any additional studies or plans to determine if these zone map amendments make sense. So,
Sorry, it's awful.
so because we're recognizing the existing situation, we're not proposing any new uses with this zone map amendment, and because we're recognizing additional projects that are in process, again, no new development process, anything that would require any additional studies or plans would happen at the time of future development. So there weren't any additional studies that were proposed as part of this. The city council may impose conditions upon rezoning. And so as you worked through the staff review, most of the areas did not have additional conditions, just the last 2 sections in the mixed use zone designation proposed movement toward mixed use. And we'll cover those as we get there. But those are on page 33. They begin on page 33 of your staff review. So amendments to zoning map and zone text shall be in accordance with the future land use map and the goals and policies found in the Hayden Comprehensive Plan. So general information related to the comprehensive plan was provided beginning on page 4 of the staff review and in more detail in the appendix. It's important to note that the comprehensive plan defines a general vision and a roadmap for the future. The plan is generalized. It's comprehensive, it's long range, it's not stagnant, and it's not a zoning ordinance. The plan does not weight any one part of the plan as having more importance than any other part of the plan. So as we're moving forward, we're looking at the future land use map and the goals and the policies. We focused primarily because these are properties that were migrating toward memorializing their existing uses, zoning designations according to their existing uses and or their approvals. We paid far more attention to the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan than the future land use map. So the vision is in every staff review that I've written since I think I became a senior planner way back when. The vision of the comprehensive plan is very important, but the goals and policies are what help us enact that vision. And so the goals and policies were reviewed for each subset of the zone map amendment, specific to that kind of use. One of the things I did want to point out is though, although actions are not, the actions part of the comprehensive plan are not normally looked at with zone map amendments, there are two actions that were relevant to this proposal because this is a city-initiated zone map amendment rather than a developer or a property owner. Action number 1 says to initiate zoning text amendments and update the zoning map accordingly to address density, transition areas, and nodes. So the task is to revise the zoning and subdivision codes to address the comprehensive plan land use directives regarding future land uses and amend the codes accordingly. And action number 3 is to evaluate the residential density ranges as outlined in the municipal zoning code to determine the appropriate house density ranges, which encourage both infill development and new development in the appropriate places throughout the city. So the task is to amend the zoning and subdivision codes to address residential density ranges in accordance with the future land use designations in the comprehensive plan. With respect to the zoning map and the zone text, and whether it aligns with the zone district's purpose and intents, we'll be looking at that under each section. So general infrastructure analysis, we do that for every zone map amendment because we want to make sure that the impact to services will be addressed. Again, we're not changing anything. Nobody's required to do anything differently with their property. So the existing uses will remain the same. So this is a general high 500,000 foot level overview of those services. At any point in the future of development, those services will be evaluated on a more specific case-by-case basis. So water district reviews include will serve letters, reviews of the plans, and or approvals of construction plans. Those are all going to be required at the time of any future development. And those are primarily in these areas on the map that were affected are Avondale Irrigation District, Hayden Lake Irrigation District, and North Kootenai Water and Sewer District. All three of those jurisdictions, all of the water jurisdictions, in fact, were notified of this zone map amendment as part of the agency notices. Dry utilities shall be installed underground within any future development in accordance with city code. All of the dry utility providers were also noticed. Sewer infrastructure shall be constructed in conformance with the City of Hayden Sewer Master Plan, state law, and city sewer policies, standards, and tech memos. Future development shall meet the requirements and pay the appropriate fees for the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District and Kootenai County Emergency Medical Services Systems. Fire, and for those of you that aren't aware, almost every permit that comes through here, as well as every land use action, has both fire and water. They both weigh in on how they're going to address drinking water as well as fire protection. Dedication of required right-of-way and granting of easements and the construction of roadways shall be in accordance with the transportation plan, adopted studies, and or technical memos. And the street doesn't just stop at the pavement, so you have to also include stormwater, pedestrian ramps, sidewalks, bike ped facilities, corner radiuses, et cetera. The whole typical section of that is looked at every time a development comes in for frontage improvements as well as subdivision construction. Lots shall have access to internal streets within future projects only. Again, we don't want to have those access points onto our arterials and collectors because those just create conflict points. And mailbox location shall be on internal streets, and that's a preference, it's a preferred. We work with the Postal Service to address those on an individual basis. So that's kind of all the general analysis. Now we're going to kind of move into the individual sections as they were addressed in the staff review. Residential suburban. So residential suburban is a zone that provides for single-family residential on larger lots and minimal agricultural uses. They're single-family dwellings. They have very similar setbacks, front yard, side yard, and rear yard setbacks as do single-family residential or mixed residential, except the side yard setback is a little bit larger in some place. Actually, that's in ag. So residential suburban is 10 feet. Flanking street setback is 15 feet in all zones. It doesn't matter where you're at. Maximum building height is 35 feet for the primary structure and 20 feet for the secondary. That you will see consistency throughout the any zone that has a residential single family in it. Those are very consistent throughout. The maximum lot coverage, and remember these lot sizes are half an acre and a minimum. And it's a minimum lot size. You have to have half an acre in the residential suburban zone. And so the maximum lot coverage is smaller because it's such a bigger lot. So it's 35%. And all of the zones that are residential have 20 feet of street frontage. And everywhere you can have a single family residence, you can also have an accessory dwelling unit. So residential suburban. These 4 lots, the staff had kind of originally at the town hall had them identified as single-family residential because although they're larger lots, they are single-family residences that occupy them. But at the town hall meeting, we actually talked to 3 of the 4 property owners and then subsequent to the town hall, the 4th property owner, and they all have requested residential suburban. They have minimum lot sizes of half an acre. All the lots are on septic. However, if they were to ever develop, they do have a manhole right there to connect sewer to the south as a result of the Hayden Meadows subdivision. We identified goals 3, 16, and 17, which talk about maintaining a balanced mix of land uses, densities, and housing types. 16 talks about private property rights. And 17 talks about promoting development through a variety of housing options and densities. And then policy number 2 is just talking about development and making sure that it's compatible with the land use chapter of the comprehensive plan and to be fiscally responsible in supplying transportation, utilities, and parks. So the existing uses of the properties to the south are also residential suburban. So this is just a continuation of the residential suburban on up Chateau that exists today. To the north is commercial. To the west and east is residential. To the northwest is that proposed to be mixed use as a conditional use permit that was approved on one of the written decisions tonight that was approved in the consent calendar. So those are those 4 lots. The other section that talks about residential suburban is an oddball. I don't know what else to call it. It's a quirky spot. In the southeast corner of the Sun Air manufactured home park is about 1,700 square feet of funny word triangular piece that I actually had over in the other person's property for a while. It has 4.4 feet of frontage on Wyoming. And it's really just a little spot that actually has one of the homes of the Sun Air manufactured home park is in kind of cut in half of it. So the rest of Sun Air in this location is zoned residential suburban. And you ask, how do you get that to be there? So manufactured home parks, as they were annexed into the city, maintained the zone that they had in the county. That's how you got this funny word spot zone out here. Because this is what used to be the Benoit manufactured home parks. When it came in, it was commercial because it was commercial in the county. And so the same thing happened here. This is Sun Air that's up here at the top. The little portion at the top of it is actually zoned commercial. But the rest of it's zoned residential suburban. And so it was annexed in as residential suburban, and then they must have picked up another little piece. And anyway, it is what it is. So manufactured home parks are considered non-conforming uses throughout the city. because they literally are in every single zone, even zones that really don't really allow for them to be there. This would be one of those. Anyway, so they're allowed to be there, they're just not allowed to get any bigger, and we just are proposing that this little sliver of a piece kind of go with its lost children and be residential suburban as well. So again, goals 3, 5, 8.
Does that house own part of that blue park?
It's all part of the park.
Oh, and they rent?
Right.
Okay.
So, okay, so goals 3, 5, 8, 12, 15, 16, and 17 were identified in the staff review. And again, that's maintaining that balanced mix of land uses, densities, housing types, preserve, protect, and strengthen existing neighborhoods, establish a balance between jobs and housing, private property rights, promote development through a variety of density options. And then policies 2, 9, 16, and 18. Those are development should be compatible, again, with the land use chapter of the comprehensive plan. Evaluate your services and any costs. But again, this is a existing use, an existing piece of property.
So Donna, was this little triangle was just overlooked? It just seems so small.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Can't speak. Everything that is to the east of it is commercial. So it's just a quirky spot.
So did you say that they're going to put houses in that area?
No, I said that the house exists today and that all the rest of the park, except for the top part, but in this area is zoned residential suburban. We're not proposing that anything change out there, but we'd like to get this one piece that's showing up as residential multifamily to become residential suburban so it matches the rest.
So for the public, I appreciate everyone showing up, and I know you have questions, and I do want them to get answered. We do have a process here, though. Donna is supposed to be briefing us, and if you see stuff you have questions on, then we have a public comments period, and that's the appropriate time to ask questions, please. And then Donna, being the city, would then respond if she chooses to those questions.
Correct. So I'm not going to go into a lot more detail about the goals and the policies. They're pretty similar to these all the way through the residential parts.
Did we contact the owner? Do we know what their, do they have
I've contacted Sunair, the owner, and we have not heard from them specifically.
Thank you. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
So then the second zone that we're looking at is single-family residential. So single-family residential, the zone provides for the classic Hayden neighborhood where single-family homes on smaller lots are permitted. Accessory dwelling units are permitted, but two-family dwellings are not. So again, looking at those setbacks, they're really similar to what you saw in the residential suburban. The difference is that for an accessory structure in the single-family residential, you can be 5 feet away from the property line, whereas in residential suburban, it was 10 feet. All the other stuff is the same except for the maximum lot coverage. Again, your lots are far smaller but they're smaller in the residential single-family zone, so you can get a 45% lot coverage. Minimum lot size is 8,250 square feet.
For those online, would you please mute your connection, please?
A fascinating documentary about something, maybe the weirdest thing ever to happen.
Can we force mute them if, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And Donna, can we go back one slide, please?
Mm-hmm.
Should we let the public know what
Well, maybe we can. I don't
just hit
know.
page up,
There we go.
what an accessory dwelling is, what the purpose of it is, so that it's not looked at as like an apartment. It's more like a he shed or a she shed or something like that in the
Accessory
backyard.
dwelling units are allowed uses in, I believe, every zone that allows for single-family residential. A single-family dwelling allows for an accessory dwelling unit. An accessory dwelling unit is a separate and distinct dwelling unit from the primary house. Has a maximum lot size of 1,000 square feet, pays a cap fee just like a house does, has some design standard requirements like a parking space, has to sit back behind the main house. It's part of your lot coverage, your setbacks, all of those still need to be met. Fire code requires that you have to have driveway access that's 12 feet wide and 13 and a half feet tall,
Thank you, Donna.
as a just kind of rule of thumb.
Donna, and your CCNRs have to, if you are in a neighborhood that has CCNRs, the CCNRs have to allow for it as well.
City
Right.
doesn't enforce CCNRs, so they
Okay.
have to work through that with their HOA, but the
Okay.
city doesn't enforce individual CCNRs.
Okay.
Good question.
Donna, I have one question. Didn't, in the old single-family residential, they could do a duplex with a conditional use permit? And we
No,
removed that?
duplexes were only allowed in the old, single-family residential by conditional use permit. But again, we heard loud and clear, as part of the Imagine Hayden process, that folks did not want to have duplexes in single-family residential, so they were removed.
So we removed that, and so the new single-family does not allow duplexes, whereas
It
the
does
old one
not.
did. So that's actually a reduction in density compared to the old.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so the first set we're going to look at is those properties within an existing, completely built, single-family residential subdivision, where all of the lots within that single-family subdivision meet the minimum lot sizes of 8,250 square feet. Staff proposes the following subdivisions to be zoned single-family residential. That would be Hayden Orchards, which is up here off of Peachtree. The west half of that subdivision is zoned single-family residential, so by having the east half match the west half, then the whole subdivision would be zoned single-family residential. The Estes subdivision, which is, my mouse, right here. That's Crest Court or Crest Street. I'm not sure what that crest has got for an ending part. It is surrounded on 3 sides by single-family residential. And all of the homes in it are also single-family. Shaw's subdivision, which is down here on C, those are the lots that are, the first 2 lots on Kirkpatrick and Shaw are pretty much commercially zoned. And so we did not change those commercially zoned properties. This is specifically to the residential multifamily zoned pieces. So from those 2 lots north to Helen, on the west side of Kirkpatrick and both sides of Shaw. That's what C is representing. Those are all single-family residential and have been single-family residential for many, many, many years, I think since forever, just about. And so it just makes a good logical sense for them to remain single-family residential. That's what we're proposing. D Court, which is down here off of Reed Road and south of Hayden Avenue. It's surrounded on 3 sides by single-family residential, and all of the homes in it are single-family residential. I have to say, we were a little concerned. There was a house that, for a variety of reasons, burned on the corner of D and Reed, and it is a large enough lot to actually have built a duplex upon. But when they reconstructed, turned in their building permit and reconstructed that home, they turned it in as a single-family residential home, maintaining the ability for that whole subdivision to be proposed as single-family residential. Cricket Estates, this is E, Cricket Estates and Cricket Estates First Edition are off of Tugboat Road. They have kind of had 2 houses that faced Ramsey, and now they have to gain access off of Tugboat Road, and they're actually mirrored images of each other. They all were constructed as single-family residences. To the south and to the west, there is also single-family residential. To the north and to the east is commercial. And Balzer Estates, this is a really interesting one. Balzer Estates came in and it actually had lots that were big enough in the residential multifamily zone to be, Balzer Estates came in and they had residential multifamily in the top lots, north and south of, I believe, Justice Way. And then below that, they were single-family residential. Up here. Up there. So they came in and they got their zone map. I mean, they didn't get a zone map amendment. They just moved forward with their subdivision, recognizing that their properties along the north needed to be larger if they wanted to ever put duplexes in. So they are. They're larger lots, and they're all large enough to put duplexes in. And then as they built out, their CCNRs were drawn up, which didn't allow them to have duplexes in any of those lots. So all of that whole subdivision has developed as single-family residential. So this would just memorialize that existing condition. The goals and policies for this particular section are found on page 12 of the staff review. Very, very similar to the ones previously talked about. Property rights, various land use densities, making sure your services are covered, et cetera. So single-family residential, for those lots, those properties where the location of the property is adjacent to or surrounded by other similar land uses of single-family residential structures and the usual accessory structures, your garages, your shops, your sheds. The lot sizes all are greater than 8,250 square feet, and the lot is not within a platted subdivision. Staff proposes the lot to be zoned single-family residential or R1. So everything that you see kind of highlighted in this pretty color, those are the lots. Notice they're all butted up against single-family residential, in this case to the west. These folks that have single-family residential are butted up against either each other or other similar single-family residential. Same with this. This guy here is kind of a weird one. This one doesn't have any sewer available to it, so it's a septic kind of conversation. Until sewer becomes available, they couldn't develop that lot anyway. And so without knowing for sure what it is they kind of wanted to do, staff was unclear as to what we could propose for them other than single-family residential.
So Donna, the areas here in blue being moved to single-family residential as opposed to, say, mixed residential, is that based on feedback from the community? Because I know originally we wanted to kind of have a buffer between commercial and R1.
Yeah, part of it is based on the input that we got from City Council. Part of it is based on input from the community. Part of it is based on existing use, and part of it is to try to maintain that no spot zone conversation. And the larger lots, if they were to develop and they wanted to do something other than single-family residential developments, they could always come forward with a zone map amendment in the future once they owned a plan on what they wanted to do.
Thank you.
So the goals and policies for these properties all start on page 14. So mixed residential. Mixed residential is a zone that provides for a range of residential structures, including single-family, two-family, and three-family dwelling units, as well as accessory dwelling units on individual lots. So I wanted to talk about that. People seem to be a little confused as to what this really defines, and part of it is because this is the kind of the purpose. It's a general purpose, generalized purpose for what the zone is for. But ultimately, it's for single-family dwellings, it's for duplexes. It is the only zone that we have today that allows for a duplex to be in it. It allows for townhomes, and townhomes by definition are 2 or 3 units that are platted as an individual unit on the land. So it's still single-family residential, although it could be a twin home, where you have 2 houses that are butted up and the lot property line is in the middle, similar to what you see on patio homes in Leisure Park. All those patio homes that are side by side, those are twin homes. That's a mixed residential concept. Now, where you could have 3 of them. We had lots of discussion with both planning and zoning and city council, and a townhome for the city is 2 and 3 units and no more. No more. So in mixed residential, you cannot have a structure that is larger than a 3-unit structure, period, in mixed residential. No special use permit to get more, no conditional use permit to get a structure that allows you to have more in mixed residential. You get 3. Or you can do cottage structures. Cottage homes are designed for the person that wants to have a small house on a small lot. So you have a small house on a small lot, you take all of that other ground you could have had for your backyard, and you put it in a community area like a plaza or a community garden or a whatever that's a community of your complex. In no way, shape, or form is mixed residential more than 8 dwelling units per acre, period. So what that means is if you come in and you get a zone map amendment on a piece of property, and we're going to say an acre because that's easy today, and you get an acre, that means you can have 8 cottage homes, you can have 8 single-family dwellings, you can have 4 duplexes, you can have 4 twin home townhomes, you could have 7 single-family dwellings and an accessory dwelling. That's it. 8 is 8. That's all there is.
And Donna? No apartments?
No apartments.
And Donna, in the current multifamily setup, you could have up to 12 currently, correct?
You
With
could
3
get-
fourplexes?
Yeah, if you could get it all to fit and meet all your other requirements, yes.
Okay.
So an overall gross reduction in the amount of doors on the square footage of that lot.
If you were to convert from one zone to the other, that's
Okay.
correct. Straight for straight. That's not to say that that would all occur, but. All right.
Good points, guys.
So also, I wanted to point out that for the single family, if you look down the front setbacks, you got a 25-foot setback for single family and for duplex. The townhome and the cottage are a little flexible with your front yard setback and your rear yard setback. It requires it to be 40 feet because our code requires that if you have a garage, you need 25 feet between your garage and your sidewalk so that you're not blocking the pedestrian sidewalk. So if you decided to make an alley access to your townhome or your cottage and you wanted to push the front up a little ways, you could do that. So that's what those notes say in the staff review that you're not seeing on this chart. Side yards for single family dwellings, front yards, side yards, rear yards, flanking street, maximum height, and street frontage are all exactly the same as for single family residential. No differences. The maximum lot coverage is a little bit bigger than for single family residential because the maximum lot size is a little bit, their minimum lot size is a little bit smaller. Okay? Just as a matter of differences of conversation. Mixed residential. So for those properties within an existing completely built single family residential subdivision, notice that the whole subdivision is single family residential, but you had a few lots that don't meet the 8,250 square foot minimum, then staff proposes the following subdivisions to be zoned mixed residential. And again, the reason is because you had lots in the subdivision that were smaller than the minimum lot size allowed in single family residential. Does that make them any less single family residential? No. Doesn't. They're still single family residential. So that would be
So all of these, just for clarity's sake, are developed.
correct.
And are non-conforming, basically, is what you were
That is
saying?
correct. So what Commissioner Bemis just asked about is non-conforming. And non-conforming is one of those really difficult kind of conversations to kind of work around. But just for the public that's here, I want to explain it just a little bit. And Fonda can jump in because she's really good at that. So non-conforming is basically the use was allowed when it was constructed, but for whatever reason, maybe there's a zone text amendment, maybe there was some kind of a change in code that effectively caused that use to no longer be an allowed use. So a really good example is when the city of Hayden zoned the very first time down Government Way and down Hayden Avenue, they took a swath, 300 feet on both sides of centerline, said commercial. And then 300 feet behind that, they said residential multifamily, which is how most of you got created. Did it make all of the houses down Hayden Avenue and all of the houses down Government Way non-conforming? Yep. Because single-family residential hasn't been allowed in commercial since the beginning of dawn, as far as an allowed use. So does that mean you can't keep using your house? You can certainly keep using your house. Nobody's telling you you can't use your house. What they are saying is that if something terribly catastrophic happened to your house and it was burned down, or wind came and blew trees through it and had to be taken down, or whatever. And for whatever reason, you didn't get it reconstructed for a year, you can't. It's kind of like you got a year's grace period to get it fixed. If you're that commercial person, or light industrial is another one that has that issue. Or if you decided to leave the house not used as a dwelling unit and you left it empty, nobody was living in it. And you got notified that said, hey, are you living in the house? Maybe you should live in the house for a couple of months, because after a year, it needs to convert to a use that works. So does that apply to most of you? No, because you're in the residential multifamily zone. What does happen to you is that you're a house sitting on a lot that doesn't meet 8,250 square feet, which is, by the way, the required minimum of all of the residential multifamily homes. So if you're on a lot that's too small and you wanted to bump out you had plenty of room, some of you do, you had plenty of room, but your lot's too small and you wanted to bump your kitchen out 5 feet, I'd get to say no. And I don't want to say no. I want to say yes. If you wanted to put an upstairs addition on the top of your garage, you wanted to add a second story, and your house is sitting on a lot that's too small. No. So I don't want to say no, I want to say yes. So by moving to mixed residential for those lots, we can say yes, as long as you can meet your setback requirements, your lot coverage requirements, your design requirements that are in that code. So those affect Stinson Estates, which is A. Pretty much all of the property north of Stinson Estates is light industrial.
So is A light industrial currently?
A is zoned residential multifamily. Yeah, everything is.
Okay.
But north of it is zoned light industrial.
There is no recommended change for any lot that isn't currently zoned residential multifamily.
Yep, just want to be clear. Thank you.
East and south is single-family residential, and west is residential suburban. Camp Court North, feel really sorry for those folks. I think this is the third time or whatever that we've tried to get a zone that actually makes sense. I think you guys started out as commercial for a while, and then you became residential multifamily, and now we're moving again. So I feel really sorry about that. But excuse me. Camp Court North is all single-family residential, and all but 2 of those lots don't meet this minimum lot size requirement. So literally almost all of the subdivision. And the council that was one more thing I wanted to say. Council gave direction that they really didn't want to say, well, this lot fits, but this lot doesn't. This lot fits, but this lot doesn't. Mixed residential is all single-family residential. We're just recognizing the fact that your subdivision has lots in it, that some of them are too small. So that's a problem with Camp Court. Camp Court North, to the north and east, is commercial. West is proposed to be single-family residential with these zone map amendments. And south is proposed to be mixed residential with these zone map amendments. Kyler subdivision, down here off of Kyler Avenue. We've got Kyler first, Kyler second. But Kyler Avenue subdivision is primarily single-family residential. It has 2 duplexes on that road and 1 fourplex at the end of the road. We recognize the fact that the fourplex would become non-conforming, but if you look at the building footprint of the fourplex, it's pretty well built out as far as maximum size. There's not a lot of room to move with that. So we're still proposing that the whole subdivision go to mixed residential. North and east is single-family residential. Southeast and northwest is residential suburban, and south is commercial. And you can see that on those existing and proposed zone map amendments that were in your staff review. Marigold Meadows, which is down here off of Ramsey and south of Hayden Avenue, just almost directly, well, it is directly west of Cricket Estates, is I don't think there's a lot in there that meets the minimum lot size of 8,250 square feet. If there are, they're just a couple at the end of the cul-de-sac. So north and west is commercial, south is single-family residential, east is proposed to be single-family residential. And Lauren Estates is quirky. We had a question that came up. Lauren Estates at the end of Macy Loop, where it actually makes the loop. And it's just south of Lauren Estates that runs up against Hayden Avenue that's zoned commercial. And it's north of Lauren Estates that's zoned single-family residential. And it has a few of those lots that are plenty large, but it has a few lots that aren't. And so again, trying not to have that spot zoning thing going on, we erred for the side of most minimum lot size issue and requested it to go to mixed residential. So the goals and policies of this section begin on page 11. So again, earlier I said that the only zone designation that allows for duplexes is mixed residential. Therefore, in subdivisions where we have duplexes, where we have 3 of them, we're proposing that they go to mixed residential. So those are Jaden Court up here off of North Government Way. They are Camp Court, not Camp Court South, but just Camp Court. It was the first one. It was entirely constructed as duplexes. And those duplexes ended up selling to a single buyer. A single buyer came in and condo platted them. So each unit is owned by a single owner. But again, as we look at the building structure came in as duplexes. So the proposal is for the mixed residential for those as well. And then Eileen Estates, that's back behind the veterinarian. And I think there's a fitness place up in the front. Those duplexes that are behind that, those are proposed to go to mixed residential. And the goals and policies, those begin on page 21. So then, there's always got to be a couple of quirky ones. Never can have just everything nice and smooth. Never have kind of quirky thing going on. So for those properties not within a plotted subdivision, where the existing use is a duplex or a triplex, again, twin home and tri-home, the closest we had to a triplex is a tri-home. 4 units or more is in mixed use. And nothing less than a single family dwelling is allowed out of mixed residential. So that's where that one kind of landed in there. Or due to a specific use, agreement, or location. I like that. That's called a soup bucket. Just got dumped in. So at 475 West Lacey. So if you're driving down Lacey and you pass Northwest Swiss on the right, the next house that looks like a house from the outside is actually a triplex. So that triplex to the west is proposed single-family residential in Crest Street. And east and north is proposed mixed use that we'll cover later. And to the south, it's commercial. So it just kind of is recognizing the existing conditions of the site. And then at 151 East Lacey Avenue, out here where B is, that's a duplex. Again, looks like a single family house from the outside, but it is a duplex. It does have 2 residences in it. East and west and south is proposed to be single family residential, and north and west is commercial. It's like the 3rd lot in where you have commercial, a single family residential, mixed residential, single family residential. And it looks like a single family residence, but it is not. It is a duplex. So the 9490, which is out here, kind of across the street, east of Balzer Estates, kind of have the house and then the automotive place and immediately behind it is this one. 9490 is a single-family residence today. They came in and got a zone map amendment to residential multifamily, and when they did that, they entered into a zoning development agreement. And so we took the zoning development agreement and the zones and kind of lined them up. And this is the zone that most closely reflects the allowed uses that were allowed in the zoning development agreement, which we were not proposing to terminate. To the west is proposed to be single-family residential. To the south, southwest is single-family residential. And to the north and east is light industrial. Again, kind of that buffer zone that's going on between the single-family and the light industrial as well. And then over here, next door from the city, if you drive down Government Way and you miss the first lot into the lot that's north of us, and you make a left too soon and you don't hit the lot that's in the parking lot here, you hit a driveway that goes back to the Country Ridge Apartments, and you think you're going to the apartments, but there's a house back there. And the house that's back there is not affiliated with the apartments. So then you're like going, well, what do I do with that? It's not really single-family residential in the R1 sense of the word, because then you'd have a spot zone of R1 with commercial to the south and mixed use to the north. So we're trying to get a use that's more like a buffer use that's allowed in there. If it was part of the apartments, they could do a conditional use permit and request it to be a caretaker involved with the apartments, because that is allowed in the commercial and mixed use and light industrial zones for a single family residence to do that, but it's not. So we were proposing mixed residential. And that's why, is because we're hoping it'll migrate to a different use at some point in the future that is more conducive to that area. And then we're going to do E and F on the next page. So E is 2 duplexes that are on Helen. 620 and 624 West Helen is 1 duplex, and 640 and 642 West Helen are the other duplex. To the east and west is proposed to be single-family residential. To the northeast and south is proposed to be mixed use. And then 9140, that's this guy right here. 9140 North Reed Road is the church on the southeast corner of Orchard and Reed. And we, as a staff, we really struggled with this one. Really struggled with this one. Churches are conditional use permits in all residential zones. So could it be single family residential? Well, yeah, maybe. Could it be mixed residential? Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. The property to the east is proposed to be mixed use based on a project that is in process. And the 3 sides around it are residential suburban. I mean, not residential, mixed, single family residential. And then, yeah, single family residential. And residential suburban is to the west. So north and south, kind of northeast, southeast, those are all single family residential. And immediately to the west is residential suburban. So, you know, they have a conditional use permit in place. They couldn't expand their church operations without amending the conditional use permit, which requires a public hearing process. We have not heard from the property owner. So anyway, that's why we propose it. We propose it as a buffer zone between the mixed use and the single family residential. Okay. Commercial. So this zone provides for most types of business, as well as for retail and wholesale sales and service. Our general commercial is really general commercial to the nth degree. Pretty much if you are not making a lot of racket and you're not making a lot of smell issues, it's a really a soup to nuts general commercial kind of conversation. And with the update in the zone map, zone designations. We had allowed in the old commercial, we had allowed by conditional use permit, multifamily. But again, during the Imagine Hayden process, we heard loud and clear from the commercial folks that they really didn't like buying a commercial piece of property, thinking that their neighbors were going to be commercial and then winding up with residential multifamily. And so we listened to them. And so we designated the commercial to be commercial only and took multifamily out of commercial. For a variety of reasons, but number one, that was the first and foremost one. It also eliminates or tries to eliminate the conflict points between those two uses, and there are many. So the setbacks, front setbacks are 20 feet, side and rear yard setbacks are 10 feet. They can go all the way down to a 0 lot line, 0 foot setback, as long as they meet fire and building codes. So when you're looking at downtowns and you're wondering how those buildings got built right next to each other, that's because they have 0 lot line setbacks. Sometimes they even share a wall. But they meet fire and building code. We allow for that as well in our commercial zones. Flanking streets, again, are 15 feet, same as every other zone designation. Maximum building heights, 45 feet, has been forever. There is no maximum lot coverage in commercial. So in a non-residential project, there are 3 things that kind of you push around to see if they work. You figure out how big of a building you want to build. Then you figure out how much parking you're required to have in order for the uses that you're proposing in said building. And then how much pavement, circulation, and parking you have to have for your uses determines how much stormwater area you have to have. If you run out of space, you shrink things up. That's kind of what happens in most all of the non-residential uses. There is no minimum lot size in commercial. There is a 30-foot street frontage requirement, and accessory dwelling units are not allowed. So, this map shows those pieces of property that are not within a platted subdivision, and they have a split zone in most cases between residential, multifamily, and commercial. So I want to show you just a couple of these, and the reason they show up as 2 is because when we do our zoning map, they're called polygons that show the area, and then they assign a color or an identifier to that. So as an example, this commercial residential piece right here, that's Gibbs Lumber. I don't know that Gibbs Lumber's back lumberyard really fits in a residential multifamily zone. This piece of property here is almost 75% commercial and has this little sliver of residential multifamily. This lot here was on this map, we were getting ready to do this, and they actually didn't want to wait. So that zone map amendment has been approved. This is Don Taylor's zone map amendment that came forward a few months ago, and it actually has all been changed to commercial. It just didn't make it to the map. This is a quirky piece right here where it's residential multifamily all the way in the back, kind of a landlocked piece of property, and then the front end is residential single family. So when you're looking at H.D. Fowler's building and you're heading east, the very next driveway drives you back to a shop. The whole use is light industrial. So commercial, light industrial kind of behavior, but neither one of them are residential multifamily or single family residential. These are a couple of quirky pieces of property over here that are split zone between commercial and residential multifamily, and they're back, but they're actually, the whole lot is actually a commercial use. And the same thing with this little long skinny piece, it has the same thing, but the whole use is being used as commercial. So our proposal is to change these to commercial. There are 2 of them that I'd like to call out. The first one is that 9538 North Reed, and the second one is 2766 West Hayden. The first one on Reed Road actually has a house in the commercial area. So what did I talk about earlier? I talked about houses in commercial areas are non-conforming uses. But as long as they're being used as a residence, they're functioning as a resident, are they allowed to remain as a residence? They are. They have requested that their property be all zoned commercial because the bulk of it is already zoned commercial at 75%. And they have a home occupation that fits in that commercial zone designation as well. So they'd like to have that all be commercial. This piece of property back here, 2766 West Hayden Avenue, we're going to talk about later. Staff proposed it all to go to commercial because the front end is commercial and because of its location with the inner critical zone. But the owner has requested something different. And so we'll share that later on in the presentation.
Before we go to mixed use, everybody good up here? Good? Keith, you good? Thanks, Donna.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Okay,
A
so
lot of information to take
it
in.
is a lot of information. And it wasn't done it wasn't just one staff person either. It was several staff people that worked on this. So the mixed use is a zone that provides for both residential and multifamily, 4 units or more per structure, and commercial land use types. Creates a flexible environment for either one or the other or both. So as you've heard from me tonight, you've heard me talk about the fact that we took duplexes out of residential single family and we put them into mixed residential. You've heard me say that we ended mixed residential. That's all single family. It's only single family. And you've heard me say that we took the multifamily out of commercial. So the only zone designation that we have where multifamily is allowed at all is in mixed use. So if you have a structure that has 4 dwelling units or more, then it would fit in the mixed use zone designation. We worked hard at recognizing both the commercial environment, the multifamily only environment, as well as multifamily and commercial when we created the setbacks and the flanking street setbacks. Those are all pretty much the same because even if you have a commercial use today, you could come back and migrate that to a multifamily use. So we wanted to have those be consistent. There isn't the ability to have a 0 lot line setback in mixed use, unlike commercial. So commercial allows for a 0 lot line and mixed use does not. The maximum height is exactly the same as commercial. And the only one that has a maximum lot coverage is when you have multifamily only. Because commercial doesn't have a maximum lot coverage, we wanted to be conscientious of that commercial environment, not make it overly crazy. There is no minimum lot size. Again, it falls into that same process. What are you building? How much parking, circulation, how much stormwater? Check. Street frontage is still,
When you say 4 units or more, is there a max?
it's the density that's allowed in the zone and how it's designed. Street frontage is 30 feet and no ADUs are allowed. So no accessory dwelling units are allowed in this zone at all. Okay, so again, being very conscientious of the fact that mixed use is a new zone. We want to make sure that it's meeting our vision, but recognizing that there are certain uses that exist today that they would only fit in this zone. We've got 4 that are identified. The first one is at 120, 130, and 170 East Dakota Avenue. Those are 2 4-plexes. Their accessory storage is on that lot as well. So they kind of use it. It's 3 lots, but they use it as a single building envelope. And the accessory structure is only for the folks that are in those 2 4-plex units. So we're treating the whole thing as a complex site. It's east of Government Way. Kind of back behind the hotel. You go up to the hotel at Government Way and Dakota, you go immediately behind them, and you're gonna see two fourplexes. They face each other, have a joint parking lot, and then back in the southeast corner is that accessory structure. East of them is single-family residential, south and west is commercial, and north is proposed to be single-family residential. Okay, so over here at Country Ridge Court, it's important to note that we have 45 dwelling units over there. My spelling is terrible. We have a clubhouse at 61 East Country Ridge Court, 3 15 dwelling unit buildings for a total of 45 dwelling units back there. And we're proposing that to go to mixed use because they're 15 unit buildings. South and west is commercial. We're south of them, and across the street is west of them. East is single-family residential. Northwest is proposed to be mixed use. North is proposed to be single-family residential. We have 615 West Hayden Avenue. So if you kind of are driving down Hayden Avenue, you really don't notice these because there are two garages that you see first. And then you see the ones at 649 and 701 that have the two 8-plexes. But behind those two garages that you hit first as you're driving west on Hayden Avenue, there are two buildings behind them that are six plexes that are back there. So you see two garages, an 8-plex, a carport, and an 8-plex is what you see when you drive down Hayden Avenue. So we're proposing that those 4 buildings, those 2 properties and 4 buildings, go to a mixed use because they're in greater than 4 dwelling unit structures. So we got a couple of PUDs that have residential multifamily in the planned unit development. So the conditions of the planned unit development, the approvals of the planned unit development act like an overlay district over the top of the underlying zone. And so the fact that we're migrating this zone designation will change those approvals not at all. Those approvals still stand, they still have to meet all of those same requirements. So Avery Estates, which I'm going to show you a picture here shortly and blow it up a bit, is split zoned commercial and residential multifamily and consists of all multifamily structures. Some of them are apartments and some of them are condominiums, and then one of them, and then in the center is a pocket park. Honeysuckle Glade has several multifamily structures that have been condominium platted up against Honeysuckle. And Honeysuckle Glade First Edition, that recently platted, replatted how the plat of the subdivision had happened. So it had took out the building envelopes that had been platted previously as multifamily structure building envelopes and created lots that are now single-family dwelling lots. And Honeysuckle Glade Second Edition is doing the same thing. The goals and policies begin on page 34. And again, the planned unit development design standards related to the site area, the building setbacks, and all of the exceptions and conditions of approval are addressed in their respective final PUD decisions. And this zone map amendment here will have no effect on those approvals. So let's look at Avery Estates. So Avery Estates is entirely built out. All of these that you kind of see, these individual lots all the way across, these have all been platted under individual ownership. And the remainder of it is owned by folks that own the entire lot. But again, the structures, the way the structures are built are multifamily structures that fit that mixed use design. So staff is actually proposing that we change the entire PUD to mixed use, including those that were zoned commercial. Just because in the future, if somebody's researching this and trying to figure out what can you do and what can you do, it's confusing. And so we're trying to eliminate confusion here, not create it. Honeysuckle Glade. So
Donna, just one question back on those PUDs.
Yeah.
Just for clarification. but nobody could come in and increase density on that parcel without coming back for a public hearing and amending the PUD.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just want everybody in the public to understand that changing that underlying zone leaves all of those terms and conditions in place, as Donna has indicated, and would require a public hearing to make a change to increase density in that location.
Correct. Okay. The same sentence with this one. So this is Honeysuckle Glade, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but you see these funny weird light blue lines back here? Those were the other building envelopes that had been previously platted. They were allowing 8-plexes, duplexes, 6-plexes, triplexes, 4-plex. A myriad of those were proposed within this. And by, thank you. And by the replat that they proposed within their own PUD, their PUD allowed for single-family dwellings all the way up through 8-plexes. So the allowance of replatting this is actually reducing the density within this PUD at their request. What we're proposing is that to recognize this existing already built environment that's already built as multifamily, and we're proposing it to go to mixed use. We're also recognizing that this is an assisted living facility, and it is an allowed outright use under the mixed use zone. And so we're requesting that it go to mixed use as well. And then we're requesting that the remainder of the PUD go to mixed residential, recognizing that single family residential that's primarily going in the underlying area. And we have spoken with several of the residents that are in there, somebody with their HOA, and the engineer that's working on the replats at the bottom as part of this process. Okay, zoning development agreements. Those properties where the project site has received approvals, as 2 of them did tonight, and is currently under development within the existing zone designation, staff proposes that a condition of approval shall be for the owner to enter into a zoning development agreement. The zoning development agreement template was included in your staff review. It shall be based on the existing conditions of approval, timelines for development of the site or sites, future development of the site or sites, and how to amend the zone map or development agreement. And then the goals and policies begin on page 35. So let's look at those. So A is the preliminary plat process is known as PZE 220057. That's that mixed use piece of property that we were talking about that would butt up on the east side of the church property. It approved a 6-lot minor subdivision into lots of 15,000 square feet or larger. And it allows for construction of multifamily dwellings on those lots. Again, remember, the residential multifamily zone only has a minimum requirement. And so although their proposal, as they brought it through it in the narrative, they are proposing to put multifamily on each of those lots, it doesn't require you to. It allows you to, but it's not a requirement to do it. You could put a single family house on it if you wanted to and you wanted a bigger lot. PZE 220068 Northwest Solutions conditional use permit was an allowed use. The written decision was in tonight's presentation, and the property is proposed to go to mixed use based on those approvals of those structures that were larger than 4 dwelling units. The Gleason 220079 is the same thing, and it is directly north of 2 of those that are already apartments and directly south of 2 of those duplexes that we're proposing to go to mixed residential. And then the Redwood Haven preliminary plat approved a 4-lot minor subdivision into lots of 15,000 square feet or larger. And that is directly south of that Honeysuckle Glade project on Reed Road. And then we have 4 properties, and almost 5, 4 properties where the owner has requested the zone designation. Detailed maps of each are within the staff review, beginning on page 40, and we'll show them down below as well. The staff proposes that a condition of approval shall be for the owner to enter into a zoning development agreement. 745 West Honeysuckle. And we're just going to kind of run through them, and then we'll run through them individually. 484, 488, and 518 West Dakota. 425 and 433 West Lacey. And then that interesting piece that we talked about that I said we'd come back to on Hayden Avenue. Whoever gave me this, voila. Huge points. 745 West Honeysuckle is directly north of the Honeysuckle Glade planned unit development. The lot is approximately 0.769 acres, and they're requesting to be able to construct 7 townhomes on the site. On 3 sides, it's zoned single-family residential. The existing use is single-family residence. I should preface part of these last 4, staff has been in and out of conversations with the owners of these 4 projects for a while. So it's not like they came in at the town hall and said, hey, I want to do something cool with my property, because that's not what happened. I mean, we've been, over the years, been in conversation trying to figure out the best path forward. So it's not like it's just being thought of today. So we kind of need to look at it from a process. Do they have a plan? Do they have a plan to submit tomorrow? No. So it's one of the reasons that staff is proposing that they enter into a zoning development agreement to try to address some time frame concerns, so that, do this or it reverts back to a different zone, so that everybody knows where it's going, kind of conversation.
And Donna, just to be clear, we're not here tonight to approve any plans. We're just simply looking at the zones. So
Correct.
Whether it's 7 townhomes or they end up building a single home, that's a different process.
Correct. It could, but zoning development agreement, you could recommend in the zoning development agreement to, directed applicant's request or timeframes. You totally put those in as part of the recommendations, right?
Yes.
Okay. So they identified 7 townhomes when we met with them last. We'd want to identify a time frame in years. The applicant is proposing 10, that the residents be removed and the townhomes be constructed. Because remember, 4 dwelling units or more in the mixed use, but we have a transition period going on here, so we recognize that. We've done that with other lots and other zone map amendments. And then identify that if the residence is not removed by the date that was in number 2, then the property shall remain or revert back to single-family residential, consistent with the neighbors to the
And for
north.
clarification for the commission, this particular parcel owner has already agreed to these terms if they were going to be in a zoning development agreement?
They agreed to zoning development, correct, and they proposed the
They
10-year
proposed
time.
these terms. So with regards to a motion, I know your brains are going, oh my goodness, how are we going to get all of these details in? You could make a motion to approve the zoning development agreement terms as presented by the parcel owner, or you could make adjustments to them.
484, 488, and 518 West Dakota Avenue. This lot is approximately 5.1395 acres in size.
Donna, before we go on, Fonda, though, the staff has recommended on page 45 to enter a zoning development agreement and does list that address. So we could just, as part of a motion, include staff recommended conditions of approval.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So this lot has not been in the limelight a couple of times before. This lot is split zoned today. It's got a little sliver down here that's commercial, and then the rest of it is residential multifamily. It had a request that came in previously, previous to the current buyer, that they wanted to put apartments back in there, and the neighbors resoundingly were not in favor of that. And so the property did sell, and it is sold to the same owners as the Wellspring Meadows project across Buttercup Lane. As part of that project, they've worked at trying to figure out a path forward to allow them to create a progressive senior community. So you kind of move through the aging process, and you can kind of move through the stages of your needs as a senior and never leave your residence. You're still at the same kind of general location. They identified several uses in the staff review, everything from senior daycares to senior community to maybe some senior apartments that are more independent living. But they really want it to dovetail with their uses across the street, so it's another phase of the construction. We also talked about the lovely wood pile that's back there. And we talked about the 3 residential dwellings that have been there since like forever as well. And so should this be approved by should the zone to mixed use, and all of the uses that we've just described are allowed uses in that zone, then we would want to identify a time in years that the single-family residences would be removed. We would want to identify that the applicant would enter into a phased site plan agreement to address phases of when things were going to happen on that site. He's bordered by 4 roads. So as he's constructing, he has to put in the frontage improvements along the roads of that phase. And to be fair and cognizant, on 5 acres, that's a lot of road frontage. So he would most likely want to phase those in. And we would want to identify, really kind of hone in, I mean, he gave us a really broad spectrum of uses to get ready for tonight, but before we entered in the zoning development agreement, we would really want to hone in on the uses of the property within that progressive senior complex. .425 and 433 West Lacey Avenue is 3 lots. There's 425 in the front and 433 in the back. And then this piece that is behind that triplex, that's pretty landlocked except for kind of a sidewalk pedestrian way from the front to the back of that Northwest Swiss building. So if you total all 3 lots together, you have a little more than 4 acres. The request is to add a multifamily, to be able to add multifamily housing for the workers of the Northwest Swiss complex that's in the front, and to add a caretaker residence back in the back to kind of keep track of everything. The property is directly west of the Hayden Lake Irrigation District water tower. To the east, northeast, and south is zoned commercial. To the north and west is proposed to be single-family residential. And again, a zoning development agreement should include pulling all of these properties in. It's called a covenant to hold the properties as a single lot. And so the whole area is a building lot, and they hold it as one parcel instead of as 3 separate parcels. Again, identify a time in years for the project beyond the existing commercial development. I'll try and figure out how else they're developing it. And then identify that should the project and required items identified in number 2 not be completed within the time identified, that the property shall revert back to just a commercial zone and not that mixed use component.
It's not me.
It's her.
She wants brownies.
Nobody wants some cats. I would give these kittens away, believe me. 2 males, they're really good. We'll talk.
Okay. Oh, boy.
The property, this is 2766 and 2802 West Hayden Avenue. So it's this long skinny one, that's 2802. It's this funny weird L-shaped one, that's 2766. And then it's this lot that's landlocked in the back. And total, that's about 16.58 acres. And so, because the only way to get this landlocked piece of property out is through the property that has the house on it, and they're all owned by the same owner, we looked at them all as one kind of building site area. And staff was proposing that it go to commercial, and we've met with the owners several times. And they're really concerned that, and they believe that their property has more value as residential multifamily with a multifamily piece to it than just with commercial. And they have some constraints to development of the property. So everybody's sewer in the city, most everybody's sewer, not everybody's, but most everybody's sewer is gravity, so it runs downhill. There in the high point. So the property that's at 2802 and the property halfway, pretty much at the yellow line of 2766 runs toward H7 to the west. And the rear of their property and the landlocked piece runs to the east to H2. And there's no sewer out there to get them sewer where they need to go. They could potentially come through somebody else's lot to get it, up here potentially for that rear half, but that doesn't help the other half. So we met several times with the engineer trying to figure out a path forward because multifamily requires that you be connected to sewer. So that's a concern. There's possibilities, but it's still a concern. This line that kind of is swathing down in the middle of this, on this side of the line is the airport inner critical zone. So everything to the left of that line is in the no high density residential conversation. So we wouldn't want to have mixed use on that side. The city is trying really hard to do away with split zoned pieces of property because they're so hard to develop upon. So staff identified all of those constraints, had multiple meetings, and they still wanted us to request that they be allowed to do multifamily on the right side of that line, assuming they could figure out a sewer solution. So in order to propose that, staff is proposing that this lot, this little long skinny lot at 2802 remain commercial. And that 2766 and the vacant lot immediately to the east of it enter into a zoning development agreement. Now, I wanted to point out that in the mixed use, we identified that every lot in the mixed use had to have road frontage. That's frontage on a public or private street. This lot does not have frontage on a public or private street. That's why we call it a landlocked piece of property. So we want to identify a time in years that the residents would be removed, because again, remember, it's a single family dwelling in a commercial, in a mixed use zone, which, because we're saying we want that to be allowed to go to mixed use. It's a single family residence that's not really supposed to be in mixed use. We want a time and when it's going to go away, or that a conditional use permit is applied for and approved for it to remain as a caretaker residence, but the caretaker has to have some commercial enterprise that it's caretaking. So it's kind of how it got to happen both ways, has to work. We want to identify that no residential multifamily structures may be constructed within that inner critical zone.
I'm sorry, could you go back just one more? I'm confused as to why you would divide those two up again. So you'd have that long skinny piece that would be commercial and the other
Right.
part would be mixed use.
They're requesting this to go to mixed use.
And they're requesting to keep the other part commercial rather than all of it mixed use.
Correct. Well, it doesn't make sense because you can't put multifamily in the inner critical zone.
Good.
To allow for it would not make much
I
sense.
just needed to hear that again. Thank
Yeah,
you.
No, that's good. Good question.
And is it mostly the owner's request that you're considering this to be mixed use as opposed to just leaving it commercial?
Correct.
Because it really, to me, looks like a commercial.
Yeah.
But we are bringing it forward. And so again, we either need to record with Kootenai County on a form acceptable to the city that covenant to hold the properties together so that that back rear vacant piece of property can get road frontage on Hayden Avenue. Or they need to do a boundary line adjustment or a subdivision to get that vacant lot to have road frontage on, or they need to build a private road so that it can get road frontage, because it doesn't have any. And then identify that any future development shall construct sewer to the correct sewer basin in accordance with the city's adopted sewer master plan. Again, because it's on the hump, trying to figure out where it's going to go. So we noticed every agency that we have to notice for this zone map amendment 33. Harbs had no comments. That's the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board. That's the treatment plant that treats your sewer. Idaho Department of Environmental Quality had no environmental impact comments. West Falls Highway District was in support. Kootenai County Sheriff's Office provided a letter concerning general information related to growth in population and sheriff's needs. I want to reiterate, we're not growing anything by this zone map amendment. We're recognizing existing conditions and existing projects, except for those last four that would come forward with some kind of a project that would then get noticed again. Public comments, sent a staff memo on Friday with all the public comments that we had received to date. 2 were neutral, 3 were opposed. And there was a response to one of those from legal counsel in the last 4 pages that I think we've already covered. So there was one public comment that was requested after the staff review was pretty well, the notices were sent and the staff review was finishing up. So it was just kind of barely, we got it like the day I was going to send the staff review. So I included it in the staff review. It's a public comment from 8868 North Reed Road from the McFaddens, who requested to go to mixed use to allow for future development purposes. And staff had identified the existing use as single-family residential R1. So the McFaddens own the piece directly north of the piece at 745 West Honeysuckle. We've met with the McFaddens a couple of times. We're in conversation about an easement that exists on the, an ingress-egress easement that exists on the east portion of their property and the property above them through 745 West Honeysuckle, and the viability of being able to develop the properties to the rear of their properties on Reed. So if you blow up the aerial of their property at 8868, you'll see a light blue line. And that light blue line and their warranty deed verify that this is a tax parcel of 2 legally created lots. So they have 2 lots that were combined for tax purposes, but they have 2 legal lots. And the lot with the house is approximately 0.2834 acres, and the lot to the back is approximately 0.4618 acres. The concern that staff has about changing this property to mixed use, these 2 legally created lots, to mixed use today, is that if 745 West Honeysuckle doesn't develop as mixed use, where they're contiguous to somebody that is mixed use to the south, you would end up with a spot zone of mixed use on Reed Road. Now granted, you're not gonna get access unless you tear down the house because there's nowhere to get access around the house to the back. But I don't know what that does. We don't have, I mean, literally, this came up during, post-town hall, pre-public hearing. So not saying not to, that's just where staff was coming from.
So if we leave it alone just as it is right now, that doesn't keep them, once that's developed, from coming in and requesting a zone map amendment.
Totally agree with that. So again, members of the public, that's the end of my presentation. To go to the, pay attention to the standards of approval as you're making comments to the commission. And I'm not leaving this one up because everybody's got it. And then basically you guys can make a recommendation. I stand for questions.
Questions for Donna?
Not at this point.
Okay.
That was tough for an hour and a half.
Sorry, guys.
Everybody are good? Donna, thank you. I'm going to give us a few minutes to stretch our legs before we go into public comment. So please do that. Just as quick as possible. All right, we're going to go to the public testimony phase. Anyone who wants to offer comments regarding this case, please submit a completed form located on the table by the entrance doors. The forms must have your name, address, and date, and whether you wish to testify in support of, opposed to, or are neutral. Anyone planning to speak must do so at the podium so your remarks can be heard in the recording system. All questions and comments will be directed to the commissioners, that's us, not to the city. The city will have the opportunity to answer the questions and offer a rebuttal after your public testimony is completed. This is an important note here. Please state your name and address for the record before you speak. And I'm going to call those first supporting the case here, then those neutral, and finally those opposed. And just for thoroughness, is there anyone out on the Zoom meeting that wishes to speak in favor of the case tonight? Okay, I'm hearing none. Oh, go ahead.
Kruger.
I'm sorry, one more time? Connie Kruger.
This is Connie Kruger. Yeah.
So Connie, could you give your address and then give your comments, please?
You bet. My address is 1859 North Lakewood Drive, Suite 102, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I just wanted to speak out on behalf of properties that are being rezoned to mixed use. And there are several different properties that we've been involved with either subdivision or SUP applications on, which will be part of these properties that will have development agreements also. And so I just wanted to speak in support of the proposal that the staff has put forward on these. And those are for TLP Enterprises, for Gleason, for Northwest Solutions, and for Doris Development, LLC.
Okay, any other comments?
No, I think just as a follow-up to that, these projects have been in development for, quite some time. They have been zoned multifamily residential also for quite a lengthy period of time. And, these are some that we have moved forward with, but have been working on the planning, the development, and engineering for, probably a year or longer on. So
Okay.
I want to make you aware of that.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Connie? No. Connie, thank you. Is there anyone else online that wishes to speak for the, in favor of the case tonight? This is Connie right here. Okay, I'm hearing none. We have someone in the public audience tonight. Maggie Lyons has filled out a form, says she wishes to speak and is for the proposal.
Me.
That's you.
That's me. Hi, it's nice to be here tonight. And my name is Maggie Lyons. We own a rental home, actually.
And you live at?
I live at 2961 East Ponderosa Lane, Hayden Lake. And we own a rental house at 9513 East Macy Loop here in Hayden.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm actually wearing two hats tonight. I'm wearing a hat as a homeowner that's part of this rezoning. And then I'm also wearing my hat as the executive director for Panhandle Affordable Housing Alliance. So I got quite an education tonight from Donna. I appreciate a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this, right, to figure out, and it's more bringing properties into compliance with their current uses. I really didn't understand that until tonight. So I'll keep my comments short, but I just want to advocate for the need for housing in our community. This is my work right now. And I've done a lot of public speaking. I spoke before the council. I wrote a letter in support of the Northwest Solutions. It's very exciting. They have agreed as a private builder and developer to allocate 20% of those units geared toward 80% AMI, area median income, wage earners. My goal is to help educate the community, educate commissions, planning and zoning commissions and city councils to understand that we can retain the flavor of our community, which is beautiful. if we provide housing that's affordable for everybody, because healthy housing provides for healthy communities. And we don't have that right now. One of the things that we've learned is that in 2016, 75% of our residents could afford to buy a home. Last year, 24%. So my work is geared toward talking about creative solutions. And we've got those here at Hayden and what I heard tonight, right? Single family, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes and more. And we can make these homes affordable by having increased density in a way that builds beautiful neighborhoods and close communities, because it builds the health of these residences and neighborhoods. So really, I would support the change if it was impacting our rental home regardless. But I'm pleased to see the work that's been done to try and bring into alignment the zonings within Hayden with the uses that are currently in force, right? So I think it's really wise, regardless of my own passion for advocating for more affordable housing. And we do have solutions. We really do. If we work with jurisdictions, we work with builders and developers like Northwest Solutions, it's a really exciting opportunity for us to have a showcase for that. So thank you so much.
Thank
I don't know if there are
you,
any
Maggie.
questions.
Anybody have questions for Maggie?
No,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Something I've failed to note, public comments. My script says 3 minutes. My lawyer says 5 minutes. No, you're fine. I'm just putting that out there. Some folks, I guess I'm saying that so maybe organize comments so they don't run too long.
Let's go 5.
Let's go 5. All right. Is there anyone in the virtual meeting that is neutral regarding tonight's case? Okay, I'm hearing not. From the public audience, we have first Russ Grant, who has indicated he wishes to speak and is neutral.
My name is Russ Grant. I live at 9102 Chateau. I guess I'm confused. What is the case?
So the case is we're taking a zone that is going to expire on the 28th of September, which is currently known as residential multifamily, and figuring out based on a number of factors, including what's already built, what category of zone it goes in based on historical or legacy zones and 2 zones that were created a year and change ago. Does that answer your question, sir?
I guess. I mean, we got a notice on our street, 2 of them, and one fell down, the day after it's put up, and the other one's been flopping around. But on it, there's a case number PZE 22-0092.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a number that we have to have in order to enter it into our computer system, so that when we send out notices to agencies, they come out of our computer system.
So a control number for what we're talking about tonight.
Okay. So the way I understood this too is that the rezoning or the consideration of zoning, this process is ongoing still until the middle of September.
Well, from here, we make a recommendation to city council.
Okay.
And the city council will either agree or disagree with what we recommend to them. And then based on their decision, zones will move from, and I write these down because they all sound alike.
Well, like I say, this whole thing's confusing to me, you know, what's going on. Donna was talking, and anyway, it covered the whole world that I'm not concerned with.
You're on Chateau, sir?
Yeah.
I believe there was 2 or 3.
There was 4 deals that she put up there, and that was another one that, this first we heard about it was tonight, that there was any kind of.
Yeah, I think there was 4 lots there that were, used to be in the residential multifamily zone, which is going to expire. And we're recommending that those 4 lots be put in the residential suburban zone, which matches the zoning on your street currently.
Okay, so what would it take to revert that zoning back to an agricultural zoning?
You have to have at least 5 acres to.
At least 5? Because everything there is 2.5 and 5.
It's 5. Anything that they're under 5 is non-conforming, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Have agricultural in Hayden still?
We have a few.
Yep.
All right. So I think that pretty much answers all my questions then.
I appreciate you asking.
So the zoning that's there is where it's going to stay at for where we're at then?
As long as council approves it.
Yes, but I mean, that's what's, okay. All right. I think I got it straightened in my mind a little bit now. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for asking, Russ.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for knowing things better than I do. I never can get them straight. All these coping mechanisms I have here. All right, we have Mike, is it Benjamin?
Sure, yes, sir.
Oh, yes, sir. So you wish to speak still?
Sir, yes, sir, please.
All right, come on up. You say you're neutral. It's,
Michael Benjamin, 700 West Helen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you very much. After coming last time, I talked a lot and said very little. I'm neutral on this because I don't know about anybody else's neighborhood, including my own. So it's hard to speak on someone else's behalf. The things that I like, I hear from you guys. The best thing was providing the classic Hayden neighborhood. You know, that has to count for something. It's easy to develop a bunch of cracker box houses that I have all around me, and that has to be done too. You can't stop things from growing. It's very frustrating not to know what's going on. This is put in a very complicated way that other people have stated they really don't understand. So it's like going to court without an attorney. And it's hard to say. Different points of view from all of you, I appreciate very much. Alan, you rock. You're really good. I have a conflict of interest with the development behind my place. I know that it doesn't meet the codes that you displayed earlier. I know that a conflict of interest would be fair property value assessment as far as building and taking your property value down, which selfishly is important to me. It's nice to see everybody from the neighborhood, some old people I haven't seen for a long time. It's good to see that we have interest in our community. When I have something of substance to say that can make a difference, I'll try. This is only my second time, and thank you.
thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have Russell Smith, says he wishes to speak and is neutral. Is Russell still here? He's in reverse? All right.
Russell Smith.
Okay, do we have anyone virtually that wishes to speak against the case that we're discussing tonight? Okay, I'm hearing none. So in no particular order, we have Nicholson who wishes to speak and is against.
Thank you very much. I'm Nick Nicholson, living at 752 West Helen. And I checked on there, I'm against it, and then I penciled in as is.
Yes, sir.
We moved in here before the big bubble started blowing up and everything just went crazy. Got a nice little community back there, and we walk up and down the street, and kids walk up and down the street. And when we got here, cars, it's amazing. Idahoans drove 25 miles an hour down Helen. But since all of the increase in building, there seems to be a tremendous amount to the north and west. And then they put in the marathon station, or the Maverick Marathon. And now we have a Dairy Queen, which is great. I can walk down, have a ice cream sundae, and then walk back and burn off the calories. So that's nice. The question is, we're walking down there, and people walking their dogs and stuff like that. And these people, I mean, they're driving way too fast. They're up in the 40s. I would like to say 60, but I don't think they're going quite that fast. But probably 40, 45. My request is, as we rezoned and we have all these people building new buildings, and I agree, it's nice to have affordable housing for people that we need to work in our community. The issue is they don't have ingress, egress, travel. We heard a couple weeks ago, we came in and heard about this Gleason thing, that they had some traffic plan that was adequate. Well, my question is, how long ago was that taken? And before anything is approved, can we demand or have another traffic thing so that they don't need to turn Helen Avenue into a 4-lane highway? Because they put 4-lane highway in there with sidewalks, and the sidewalk's going to be right by my front door. So I liked what Donna's mentioned, somebody mentioned, the neighborhoods in Hayden to preserve, protect, and strengthen. And I think you folks here are in an excellent position to get the city to watch where they do permits, or I don't know how that works, and make highways and traffic directions and put in stop signs. We don't have one stop sign heading east on Helen. So people come around, and I admit it's an easy way to get to Dairy Queen. It's a lot faster. So anyway, I could go on. I would just really like you to consider the neighborhoods and the people that are living there. How are you impacting the increase in traffic? Because I didn't count it, but I estimate, because I spent a lot of time in the yard and stuff, and it's probably doubled since we've been here, the traffic, the amount and the speed. So I'll give you 3 minutes, so.
Yes, sir. I think I'd be fussing at that guy in the green. Maybe catch some of them speeders for you. Okay, next we have Sherry Nicholson, who wishes to speak and is against.
Thank you for letting me speak again. My name is Sherry Nicholson. My husband and I live at 752 West Helen Avenue. We're so thrilled to live in Hayden. We love our Hayden neighborhood. I have a question for whoever it is that can help me with the changes that have been proposed tonight. How will that affect the Gleason Project? I know that's a conditional use permit, and I don't think anything will change on the Gleason Project. Am I correct?
That would be my understanding. I would ask if Donna wants to offer rebuttal comments when the public testimony is done to address that.
Okay, so it's a conditional use permit. The plan is right now, because they've dotted the i's and crossed the t's, I can't remember the lady's name who spoke for the developer last time we were here, Andrea or Allison or something. Basically, she called it a boilerplate, the letter that was received in response to from the Sheriff's Department. I still care about the health, safety, and welfare of the community, especially the community that I live and walk around in. I'm a pedestrian. I don't have a dog to walk, but I'm still a pedestrian. I care about the bicyclers and the people out walking their dog. The Gleason Project is going to look like, if the developers do what they say they're going to do, according to the realtor that was here last time, they're going to look like the apartments behind Capone's parking lot, which are 2-story and would look down right into our neighbor's backyard and into our backyard. and having lanai there. Why they think they need to jam 30 cars and 12 dwellings into that little flag lot, it's incomprehensible to me. I have no idea. I would support completely one-story development. Have it for seniors, have it for healthcare workers, have it for whoever you want to have it for, but make it affordable and make it one story because it would fit the neighborhood. It would fit the use that the neighborhood lends itself to. There's already duplexes in the front, so to speak, on West Helen Avenue, so it would lend itself to kind of match with that. One story would be the way to go if I were the developer. I'm completely against doing, it may be legal, but ask yourselves, is it right? It's not right. No, they can put in more than 12. They could put in more. I guess there's no cap on it. I don't know. Please think about it. I don't know what the Gleason Project would, the changes in this, if the Gleason Project were not happening now and maybe happening in a year after all these changes come into play, I don't know if it would change. But I support a one-story Gleason Project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next is Robin Davis, who wishes to speak against. Has Robin left the building? Okay, it appears to be. And last is Lamont Owens, who wishes to speak and is against tonight's proposal.
And for the public, the record that goes to council will indicate all of the forms that were turned in with the people's names and who was in support and who was not, so that it's part of the complete record when this goes to council, even if they left and didn't speak.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, my name is Lamont Owens. I live at 1443 West Tugboat Road. I believe it's the Cricket Estates, which is
Right around there? Yep.
we have just purchased the house here. Second to the end, we have a boat storage here, and all of this is going to be zoned. The issue that I have is that, you know, for the past 19 years and some change, I lived in Honolulu, Hawaii. And so I know high density. I'm very familiar with it. So when I first got here, I was sitting in my backyard and I was like, wow, you know, I got some trees. And then all of a sudden I get this thing in the mail saying, oh my God, this is going to be commercialized. And I don't know what their business, houses or whatever it is they put back there. But what I do know is that if Hayden isn't careful, Hayden's going to look like Spokane. It's going to look like Waikiki. And in my opinion, it always starts, hey, we're trying to change these things and make it more affordable. But the more you commercialize it, the less affordable it is. And that's just a fact. And so I see how they're trying to sell it to us. You know, we want affordable houses. We want, you know, more businesses. But from what I've seen, as you commercialize it more, as commercial areas start to encroach on residential areas, you'll never get that residential area back. I've never seen a scenario where they will tear down a commercial building and put a residential house there. They will always tear down or rezone a residential area to put a commercial. So I'm just telling you, the citizens of Hayden, if you're not careful, you're going to come from where I came from, Honolulu, and you're going to know what high density and unaffordability really looks like. So I thank you. I just wanted to tell you that, but I thought I escaped it, but I just got reintroduced to it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I believe that's everyone that wanted to speak tonight. And so Donna, do you wish to offer a rebuttal against anything brought up?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, record shows that the city is not going to offer rebuttal for any of the points or questions that were offered during public testimony. Does anyone, commissioners, do you have any further questions? Not hearing any yeses here, so I'm going to close the hearing. No more questions or comments will be allowed from the public. And so for the commissioners, do you wish to proceed, or do we want to schedule deliberations for another date?
Proceed.
We can proceed.
Let's proceed.
Proceed.
Okay, we got a unanimous proceed. So you want to go first? Just go right to left, or?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Oh, thanks for throwing up the standards of approval, Donna.
She started that end.
You want me to start at this end?
Please.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon. Looks like Paul got plenty to hear.
Okay, sounds good. So in the topic of a couple of properties, the 2802 and 2766 on West Hayden and the 8868 Reed Road, I feel like those are two pieces that I'm concerned about with the standards of approval. The 2802 and 2766, the property owner was interested in making that the one that could be split between commercial and mixed use. And we kind of hinted at it while it was happening, and I feel like that should just stay commercial. The 8868 Reed Road seems like it's reliant on the property that is to the south of it.
Yep.
And I feel like we should just table that one until the property to the south finishes whatever it is doing. Besides that, as far as the standards of approval go, I have a hard time believing that the city has done anything but give great detail as to what it is that you are trying to move towards, and trying to get rid of all of these random zones and just try and make it something that's contiguous. So that way we all know what's truly going on out there, and it's answering a lot of questions. So, that's kind of where I'm going. That's where I'm headed. So I'd like to move on down the line.
Ben?
I agree. I think there's a lot of, someone who's lived here like 8 years, it's like staggering the amount of it's like everybody just threw stuff out onto a map and it landed, and now we have zoning or parcels and everything that just has, it's like, man, how did this end up like that? Like the one in the mobile home park. It's like, wow, you don't realize it until you see it on a map. So I think what Brandon said is a good point. The city's been very clear. I think the information's been very concise. I feel like when all this is revisited based off of the city council coming back to the staff and asking them to, sort of dial back the direction we were headed and then kind of reverse course and then set a new course, I think this is the right way to go about it. And based off what I've seen in the public tonight and kind of watching people's reactions and things of that nature, and the fact that half the room is cleared out, I think that probably everybody walked out of here with a little bit more at ease at what they heard, and put people's maybe fears is too strong of a word, but concerns, correct. And dialing back the density levels too, I think was a big thing that people, rightfully so in this community, myself included, is something that we didn't want to leave that to Post Falls. So I think the direction, the way we've gone, what city staff has done is very professional, and there probably are some minor details that Brandon brings up that we could discuss on a little bit further detail, but I think overall it was a really good job. And I'm a lot more clear about the direction we need to go, so.
Okay, Sean?
Yeah, I think regarding the standards of approval, the staff has done an amazing job. And I think through this whole process, there's been a really good job of listening to the concerns of the citizens regarding density. We took duplexes out of single family. We actually did design standards to keep density down in the mixed use zone. I think a lot of the concerns people have are maybe just not understanding what it is we've been working on the last 3 years here. And I applaud Donna because it's a lot of work going through all these properties and really getting the zoning to make sense across the board. So I believe we have met the standards of approval. I think for the last speaker, actually, his neighborhood will now be zoned single-family residential, whereas it was multifamily before. So you actually did get zoned down, if that makes sense. And that's what we're trying to do is have these zonings make sense across the board, and fit with the character of the neighborhood. So I believe and with the future land use map. So yes, I believe we've met the standards of approval.
Okay, Mary?
So I think that, again, yes, as everyone, we applaud Donna and her staff. Yes, I know, it was a team effort, but you were a great leader in it, and it was amazing to read through this very large staff review and packet and understand what the picture of what was going on. And then your very thorough presentation tonight, I just was very well presented. Thank you so much, Donna. I think that a lot of people didn't understand what the residential multifamily allowed, and now the mixed residential clarifies that, reduces density. I think that the rezone to make things more consistent with what's actually there, and there's a reason for it, is really consistent with what the community needs and wants. Once you understand what it is that it was all about. I understand when you get one of those signs in your neighborhood, you go, whoa, wait a minute. And it's just a matter of understanding what it's about. And so I think that the city staff has done an excellent job of explaining that. I do have a couple of concerns. One, the 3 lots on West Hayden. I really feel strongly that needs to stay all commercial. Not comfortable with.
Are you talking about 2766 and 2802 West Hayden?
Yes. Yes. Not kind of doing a workaround to make it okay to put multifamily that close to the critical zone. I think you're splitting hairs there, and I'm not comfortable with it. So I would agree with staff that would need to remain all commercial. And then the one on Reed Road, you stated it exactly. And that is, until that southern piece to the south of them does develop, I don't think that we need to touch that one at all.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Standards of approval, you're good with them then?
Me? Yeah. No, I think that it is consistent with what the community needs in order to keep the community safe and healthy.
Super, thank you. Keith?
Hey, thanks.
Say the best for last.
So, however we end up, trying to make a motion and stuff, Mary, Brandon, same thing. Everything that they said, I hope we can get that in.
Sure.
That way. So, I'm kind of the new guy on the commission. And so, I think that when you do a job for a certain length of time, you use certain terminologies that when you came into it, you didn't know what they meant. everybody just throws them around and it's kind of confusing. So I kind of want to speak in plain English. This map has had so much work put into it, and it is not an easy job. And we are citizens, we're not paid. We donate our time to do this job to protect our community and make it go in the direction that we think the community wants it to go in. Having said that, we have a lawyer at every meeting to make sure that what we do doesn't bring the city in the crosshairs of any lawsuits that would waste our tax dollars. Because our tax dollars, we got lots of things we'd love to do with them, and there's not enough of them in the first place. We need more stop signs. We need more of roundabouts, stuff like that, right? And we would love to use those dollars for those types of things and not waste it on frivolous lawsuits. So everything that we do, we don't have any power to control speed limits. That's not what we do. All we have control over is a little slice of the pie, and it says the homeowners, the property owners, they have rights, and we need to make sure that their rights are protected. So, for instance, when we look around our neighborhoods and we see big open lots, they're owned by somebody, and they have rights too. And we have to protect their rights just the same as the house that's 30 years old that's lived next to that field. And when that field gets developed into something, whatever it is, it can't be a skyscraper. It has to be 2 stories. Everybody can do 2 stories, right? There's nothing the matter with that. It maybe not be very fun, but the bottom line is we can't change that. The only thing we can do is protect your rights. And when I say your rights, I'm saying mine too, because I'm right with you. I'm not paid to do this. I'm really looking out for us. And so in plain English, the things that Donna and her staff has prepared for us tonight is in our best interest. Lamont, it didn't raise the density, it's lowering it. I know that you look at the red part there. Commercial just means businesses. It doesn't mean big apartment buildings. That's not what it means. And so there's a lot of these areas here that butt up right next to a business area, and the zoning is kind of screwy. And we're trying to fix that and make it so that it's more in conforming with the type of properties that are around it. And basically we're trying to fix things that are kind of, not right, or that could be made better. Is that okay, Fonda?
You did great.
Okay, good. So anyway, I just want you guys to know we're citizens and we echo the same fears that you guys have. That's why I took the position, is so I could help keep Hayden. But I can only do what I can do within the confines of the law, or else I'm stepping on somebody else's rights. And then I get sued, the city gets sued, and that's a waste of tax dollars, and you don't want that either. So, okay, fine. Make a motion that we, you gonna go? Okay.
Go.
All right.
This gets a turn.
I think everyone's heaped enough praise on Donna, so I'll skip that, but it's there. I think the city's done a fabulous job trying to consider the existing development as they've laid out new zones. The zone map going on my brain, or the future land use map, has changed significantly. In that there used to be a little more purple in it, a little more mixed use, and that's been, or not?
You're not touching the future land use map as part of this process.
Right. I apologize. We'll just call it the map. My brain remembers a lot more mixed use going in, and maybe not. So I'll drop that tangent. I guess what I'm trying to say is, based on what I've heard tonight, relative to workshops I've been in with City Council last year, the density is been reduced.
Correct.
That's really what I want to say. I wrote down each property under each area. My only concern is the 8868 North Reed. Could it be mixed use in the future? Yes. I don't think now is the time to make it mixed use. Regarding 2766 and 2802 West Hayden, I realize there's a home there now, which would be non-conforming in a commercial area. So I think mixed use is a more applicable zone, but that's just my opinion. I think as far as the staff's conditions of approval, we should look at those, page, is it 44? Page 45, to make sure if we make a motion that we consider those, especially if we're going to go, I recommend something other than, or in addition to the, I guess, condition of approval. There's just one with a bunch of subs under it. Anyway, that's enough yammering for me. Any further discussion needs to be had based on comments that have been shared by others? Brandon's a no, Ben's a no, John's a no. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Okay, it's a big one, so you're going to have to help me through it. Can I, in my motion, make it, so let me ask, Donna, let me ask for some clarification. Fonda, let me ask for some clarification. On the staff recommendations, the 2766 West Hayden, so the map showed it all red. Is that what the staff recommendation is, for it to stay all red?
We public noticed it as being all red.
Okay.
The applicant, it's part of the town hall, and then the applicant requested that they enter into a zoning development agreement, allowing it all to go to mixed use. But the zoning development agreement would basically say that this part could be commercial, would be commercial, because no multifamily would be allowed in it. And multifamily could only be allowed in this area back here.
And as a reminder,
that whole property could develop as commercial in the mixed use code.
And that's because it's in the inner critical zone.
So is your condition of approval to support it staying commercial or moving to commercial, or is it,
I don't have a direction for you.
So there's no staff recommended conditions.
That's what I'm asking.
If you choose to go with the request by the applicant to go to mixed use, then there are staff recommended conditions on that zoning development agreement in mixed use.
Gotcha, and that you'd want to, okay.
I would recommend that you carve out 2802 and 2766 for their own motion, for its own motion.
Okay.
If that's the direction you're headed. And then I think I also heard concern with 8866 Reed Road. Handle those separately in each of their own motion.
So we don't have to have one big
No.
family style motion?
Not one big, one size fits all.
Okay, good.
So you can make a motion however, whichever direction you're going to go.
You gave us special cheat sheets for tonight, I believe, right?
Yeah, we did actually. Gave you kind of a.
You have every sample motion that you could possibly make.
Okay, so give me just a minute, or somebody else who's already looked at them can take over.
Oh, I think that.
Oh, there we go.
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
In the matter of PZE-22-0092 Citywide Residential Zone Map Amendment, I motion to recommend to City Council to approve with conditions the Citywide Residential Zone Map Amendment with the staff's proposed conditions and the following additional conditions: that property 2802 and 2766 West Hayden stay commercial, and 8868 Reed Road is tabled until further notice.
We could just stay single family.
Or stay single family.
stay
Okay.
single family.
I'll second that.
Wanda, sounds good?
Yes, it was excellent.
And we heard a second?
Second.
All right, may we get a roll call?
First.
Cheat sheet, impressive.
So Commissioner Gibson,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard. Yes. Commissioner Prickett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Bemis,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes. Okay, any reports from the city?
Just a sec.
Motion passes.
Motion passes, yes, for the record, thank you. My first day.
Can you leave the map up after?
I can open it back up. Had a couple of calendar items I wanted to keep the prize to. They're over there.
Sorry.
So just as a matter of interest, the city council on the 23rd of this month, so that's next Tuesday, right? The city's impact fee study, public hearing will be heard for the impact fees. I know Sean's part of that committee. And the fire and EMS impact fees, public hearing will also occur same night. Then on August 29th, we'll have the written recommendation for this, from this meeting on as consent calendar. And we'll also have a public hearing. Your staff reviews will come out to you tomorrow.
When does this go to city council then?
I'm getting there.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. It's the next public hearing is for the Westbrook termination of a zoning development agreement request. And that'll be heard on the 29th of August. And then on the 13th of September is the city council's public hearing for this residential multifamily zone map amendment. The 19th is our only meeting in September for planning and zoning. And as of right now, I think it's going to be a workshop. And then the 27th at city council will be the public hearing following your public hearing you're having the end of this month. And that'll take us into October.
Don, I'm tentatively out of town the week of the 19th of September.
Okay. Sean, I guess I'll have to be here.
What do you mean by workshop on the 19th?
Fawn and I are working through the kind of, not at this moment, but that might change.
Okay.
Okay.
It'll be a training session for you, essentially.
Yep.
Is that for reports?
Yeah.
All right, we're considered adjourned. Thank you, commissioners.
Anybody wants to visit with